A really popular Expedition 33 theory is the one that says that Painted Alicia was actually created by the real Renoir in the hopes of reminding Aline of the real world. And this theory has some evidence behind it, but I don't actually think this theory holds a lot of merit, and I'm going to explain why in this video. But first, I just want to thank you guys for all the support that I've been getting throughout these last few weeks on making content. I have a ton of videos planned, and I am sorry about the delay. I've been sick, and I kind of had some tests. So, yeah, we're going to get into this video, and hope you guys enjoy. So, let's get started by saying where the theory started. I believe the theory started during the Reacher quest line, the one where you, as Maelle, wants to go to the top of the Reacher mountain where the last Axon is and talk to the Painted Alicia, since she now has the knowledge of her life before. And the detail that kind of kickstarted this theory is the fact that when Maelle gomages her after Alicia says, "Send me to my family," she gomages into Red Petals, and red is associated with Renoir. So perhaps that means that Renoir painted her? I'm not sure. And the theory expands with the idea that Aline would want Alicia in the canvas, or at least a version of Alicia. It says, well, even in her own journal, she says that even just looking at Alicia reflects the pain back tenfold. It's like a broken mirror, and she just can't look at her. So why would she want her in the canvas? And she also refers to Alicia, or at least the group as they meet her for the first time at the end of Act 2, as another one of his tricks, which is really interesting phrasing because another trick? Is there already a trick of Alicia in the canvas? We don't know, but we could extrapolate and say maybe she's referring to the Painted Alicia. But that's really all I could find on this theory. She also says that they must be one of his creations. So I really did look. I could not find a lot other than that, so I'm going to disprove what I can and explain to you why I don't really like this theory and why I think it's not that good story-wise. So yeah, let's get started. Let's get the personal opinions out of the way. Why don't I like this theory? Well, I just feel like it's weaker for Alicia's character to be painted by Renoir. We see throughout the game that she's spending her entire time trying to form a connection with Maelle. The first time they meet, she's with the painted Renoir, and she's trying to touch Maelle. She's trying to prove that she's real to her. And then we see her again. She has a poem for Maelle. The entire thing is her centered around Maelle, seeing this version of herself that she just can never be, and eventually wishing the best for her in the note saying, "What will you paint?" giving her a choice that Alicia herself never had. And it's this really beautiful story that is sort of on the shelf, you only see it in parts, and then it ends in this crazy way, but they have like this conversation at the end and it feels rewarding. And I feel like a lot of that is taken away if she was just painted by Renoir to remind Aline of the real world, because we see that that doesn't really work. And because, for one, at the end of Act 2, she doesn't even recognize who's who, because she doesn't, she's so deep into this painted world that she's starting to forget what's real. And I feel like that would just be Alicia failing her job to remind her, or Painted Alicia, sorry, failing her job to remind her mother of the real world. I feel like it hits a lot deeper if Aline painted her to suffer, painted her after the fire, which she did, and then she's still trying to form a connection with her real world self, seeing that she was also painted over, but painted in a way that she has a life she always wanted, that she's actually something. And she's trying to form this connection and eventually is the one that reveals the truth to Maelle, because we know that's how she learned. She found the letter. I just think the story hits a lot deeper that way for those two characters. And now I'm going to try to disprove the theory. So let's talk about the petals. The petals is the one thing that I feel I cannot explain well, and I also feel like nobody in the fandom can explain well, because I've looked, and I've even tried to come up with my own theories. I have no idea what these petals mean. It's clear that the red sometimes symbolizes Renoir, and the gold is mostly associated with Maelle and Clea, and the white is probably the most clear one. It's uh, related to Aline and Aline's creations, but we can't just really pick and choose when we want it to mean that, because the fact she gomages into red petals does not mean she's Renoir's creations, because you gotta remember the people of Lumiere who were confirmed to be painted by Aline. Aline painted Lumiere and the Lumiereans. They fade into red petals. And Renoir himself fades into red petals. Paint of Renoir fades into red petals. Aline fades into gold petals. It really, the game just switches up. Verso in Maelle's ending fades into white petals, but in his ending he fades into red petals. The petals, I have no idea if they even mean anything, because I just don't think we can look at this and then apply it just because we want Painted Alicia to be a creation of Renoir. I just don't think it works there, because then that would imply, okay, well, if it means who painted them, why doesn't it mean who painted them during the gommage? Why does it mean this and this? It doesn't work. I think it might have been an oversight, or maybe they don't mean anything, or maybe it means something that we're just not thinking of yet. Now, don't get me wrong, I do believe there is an answer, I just don't think we found the answer just yet. Next, let's talk about how Aline reflects her grief upon her creations. Now, immediately, I just cannot talk about Painted Clea. I don't know enough about Painted Clea. I don't have any footage of Painted Clea, so I can't really, go back and examine my footage. I am working on that, though. I'm refilming the entire game, start to finish, and yeah, it's for the big video. But let's talk about how Painted Renoir himself said this first. He goes, "The pain of losing you, she made me inherit it. It's punishment for not being there when it matters."
We're taking her down.
She's not the only one who grieves. The pain of losing you, she made me inherit it. Punishment, perhaps, for not being there when it mattered. I refuse to lose my son.
And we could, and Verso. Verso got the depressive part of grief reflected on him, because he's painted to be perfect, the perfect version of her son, but even in the end of the world, he's still not perfect. Okay, he makes mistakes throughout this entire game, and you might be wondering, okay, well, how do we know he's painted to be perfect? Well, let's look at his abilities. When his whole thing is about perfection. It's about being the most perfect he can in battle, and that's symbolism for him being the quote-unquote perfect version of Verso. But nothing can replicate Verso. Verso himself in the real world wasn't perfect because he hid his truth with lies. He wanted to be a musician, not a painter. But he never revealed that to his family, even though Aline was the one who taught him piano. We know that from Versus drafts. Now let's talk about, since she does that, we can just automatically assume that Alicia would get the full brunt of it. She was the one that caused the fire. We don't exactly know how, but we know it was her fault. In a way, I'm not blaming this entire thing on her. I'm talking from Aline's perspective. This was her fault. She got Verso killed. And we could say, okay, if Renoir wasn't there when it mattered, and he still got some pretty shitty grief reflected onto him, he was reflected. The pain of losing Verso was reflected on him. We could say Alicia would get the full brunt of this. Aline yelled at her even when she couldn't defend herself. And when we look at the memories, Aline was pissed. Like, we could say, since Alicia's healed in that memory scene and she's still getting yelled at, that it must have been a long time after the fire. Maybe not a long time, but at least weeks, because she had time to fully heal. And you could just imagine that she's going to get the full force of it. That's why she's not even painted with colors. She's painted burnt, scarred. She can't speak. She can't defend herself. She has white hair. She looks like a mess. She's got a mask over her face, so Aline doesn't even have to look at her. The color part really sticks with me, because Aline is cruel enough not to even paint her the color as she is in real world. She's painted gray, and I think that thematically fits with the story. I think that that's what's meant to be intended, not that Renoir painted her to remind Aline of the real world, because I feel like the game would have showed that happening at least once, but the game doesn't do that, so I don't think they would leave us that many puzzle pieces to put together. I think it makes more sense like this, and the design makes sense too. I can't look at her because the pain of looking at her is like a broken mirror reflecting back at me tenfold. So she paints her with a mask. Now that is pretty awful. She can't even look at her own daughter. She can't even look at her. And that also could explain why she gets so confused at the end of Act 2. Because she doesn't even remember what Alicia looked like before the fire. She painted Alicia like this. in the canvas, and then she sees a version she doesn't even remember painting. Because remember, Aline's chroma automatically painted over the real Alicia and made her reborn as Maelle, as one of the Lumiereans. And she doesn't even remember doing that. She knows Alicia is in the canvas because, or she knows Maelle is in the canvas because of the Act 1 ending, where we heard them, the two of them talking. But she doesn't know what she looks like. And then she sees her at the end of Act 2 before the fire, and she's thinking, okay, you're another one of his tricks, aren't you? You're painted like this to remind me of my life before the fire. You're not like this. What happened to your face? Why is your face fixed? You're another one of his creations. Now that line always stuck with me because I think she's referring to the fact that Renoir does have creations of his own in the canvas, and that's the axons. And I think that she knows that the axons are meant to represent his vision for the family, and that's another one of his creations. But I do believe that he's just referring to the fact that there's the axons, and she just thinks that Maelle without the scars is a trick of Renoir to remind her of what this theory was actually supposed to be about. That she was painted to remind Aline of the real world. But I think that this fits more thematically, that Maelle was accidentally painted over in the canvas, reborn as, well, Maelle. And then she grew up in the canvas. She has a life in the canvas. And then when she finally sees her mother without even realizing it's her mother, because she lived this whole fake life, not fake, but this whole new life, and she's the vision of herself she always wanted to be, and then her mother seeing her like this strong, not scared, just something that, she always imagined, or at least her father always imagined for her. She's like, okay, this is another one of your tricks, Renoir. This is another one of your tricks. Just some extra evidence to reinforce my point is that Aline is the most skilled painter out of the family. We don't know how skilled you have to be to create a human, but we know she's the only one in the game that can create a human. Now, before you say Clea did not create the painted Clea. She painted over her. And Maelle herself said Clea is the only one that's skilled enough to do that. Now, Renoir himself is never ever seen painting a human. You guys might know something I don't, but I feel like I'd remember him painting a human. Nothing in the canvas that's a human is his creation. They're all Aline's creations. Now, I believe that painting a human is one of the most skilled things you can do as a painter. I believe that only Aline would have the skill to do it. Now, what's Alicia? A human. Now, you might be thinking, well, she's not. You said earlier she's not a complete drawing. Still, I feel like adding color would be the easy part. We know she has a personality because she smiles a lot whenever she's with Maelle, especially in the ending. She is a human, and yeah, I feel like Renoir can't do that. And also, another evidence is that during the Reach Request line, this is a really good one, is that Maelle picks up Alicia's mask, she looks at it, and then she looks at the monolith where the painters used to be, and then she says, she blames us, doesn't she? You didn't deserve that. And what else could that be referring to other than the fact that she blames me for the fire, or us, because you're part of this too, and she reflected that grief onto you while painting you. That's why you look like this.
She blames us, doesn't she? You didn't deserve that.
And it's not fair. You did not deserve that. It's not fair that you get to look at me, a healed version of yourself that you can't be, And I feel like, in the context I'm Renoir painting it, that scene makes zero sense, okay? And I also feel like it just doesn't hit as hard. I just don't like this theory because it really lowers down Alicia's character to me. I don't know why, but I just don't think it's the case. Now I want to talk about a theory from one of my own members. If you want to be a member, I have everything on the cheapest tier. Only do it if you have to. But Brunch Princess suggested that maybe Clea painted over her. And I actually think this is an interesting theory. Listen, I'm sorry, Brunch Princess. I don't think it's right, but I think it's a really interesting theory. Now, there's only one thing that kind of makes it so it doesn't work, and that's the way Clea paints over. She paints over. The two creations we know she painted over are basically stripped of their free will. Simon, for example, has zero free will, and he completely destroys the hauler. And we see that Clea's like kind of like mind controlling him with like I don't know the lore completely, but I just know that he lost all his free will, is kind of confined to destroying things, and like Clea's like seducing him or something all the time. And because he was in love with Painted Clea, and then he got tricked, and then he was painted over. And Painted Clea herself is just a complete like slave. It's really sad. She got painted over by the real Clea because she hated the interpretation her mother made of her, and just made to endlessly churn out Nebrons. And if we're gonna think 3 for 3, maybe the gray color kind of fits that. Maybe that's why Alicia looks like that, but she still doesn't have that painted over look. And also, she has free will. Like, she's just kind of doing her own thing. If her main goal was to be reminding Aline of the fact that this is what your real daughter looks like, then she would be more focused on that instead of trying to form a connection with Maelle. And also, she kind of just does her own thing throughout the game. And I feel like if Clea did paint over her, we would see more evidence towards that. You know, because she kind of just like disappears and goes off on a mountain, and then, you know, I do think that Alicia kind of does. No, she doesn't really overall help out Clea and her goals. I don't know. It's interesting, but I just think that there would be more evidence towards it. I like the theory though. Very cool, very interesting. Finally, I would like to just thank everybody for their support. I do think that this theory is an interesting theory. I just really don't like it. I'm sorry. And I hope I disproved it good enough, but obviously you can argue your points in the comments. I just think there's too much evidence against it than for it. And I feel like a lot of the theories that have, that might not be shown by the game have a lot more evidence towards it, like the birthday theory. I think that one's really interesting, and I do plan on making a video of it. But yeah, I just want to thank you guys for watching. If you watched through this whole video and you enjoyed it, please leave a like, comment down below. Anything helps. Subscription, please, if you don't mind. If you think I've earned it. I have a lot of Expedition 33 videos planned. I am currently working on this gigantic video that I will share more details on closer to release, or if you're a member, you already know all about it. And yeah, I just want to thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one, and yeah, have a great weekend.